All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we are decoding a massive disconnect. The huge, glaring gap between what looks rich to most people and who actually is rich. It's a fascinating dynamic, and by the end of this, you are going to view the entire world of luxury, wealth, and status in a completely different light.
Picture this. It's a completely relatable office scenario. You're in the elevator, right? You spent the morning getting ready for a big work event. Your shoes, your bag, your watch, they all have these highly recognizable, visible luxury logos. You catch your reflection, you feel sharp, you feel confident. But then you walk into the room and notice the woman in the corner. She's wearing a plain, perfectly fitted navy sweater and quiet, well-worn leather shoes. Literally no logos in sight. Well, 20 minutes later, you find out she's the CEO. And get this, she has more in her brokerage account than you will earn in the next 12 years combined. So why is she looking at those loud logos with quiet amusement? Because what looks rich to most of us actually screams broke to the people who've built real wealth.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the wealth perception gap.
Okay, so the absolutely crucial concept to grasp right off the bat is this idea of managed wealth. It's basically a cluster of loud, super predictable signals that people use to broadcast success. But ironically enough, to those who actually have money, these signals broadcast financial fragility. Why is that? Well, because they are almost always leveraged, meaning bought on credit or leased, and they're designed entirely for outward approval. It's all about aspiration.
Which brings us to Section 2, loud signals and the brutal math. Let's start with cars, because this is where you see it the most. The absolute loudest signal of manufactured wealth? It's the least base model luxury car. You know the ones, the entry-level BMW or Mercedes bought specifically for that badge on the hood. Now, when a genuinely wealthy person sees that entry-level BMW in the parking lot, they aren't impressed. No way. They're actually running the math in their heads. They know the depreciation curve. They don't see a flex. They see a wealth extraction event. They just see a massive monthly liability anchoring the driver down.
And the reality of what rich people actually drive is kind of shocking. According to the National Study of Millionaires, the top 3 vehicle brands driven by actual millionaires are, drumroll please, Toyota, Honda, and Ford. Seriously, over 61% of people earning over $250,000 drive these highly reliable, completely unglamorous brands. The genuinely wealthy let everyone else compete for parking lot status while they just drive around in a paid-off Honda.
The brutal math underneath all this manufactured wealth is just staggering. Right now, the average new vehicle monthly payment in the U.S. has hit an astonishing $767. Think about that. More than 20% of new car buyers are committing to payments over $1,000 a month. This all feeds into over $1.66 trillion of total U.S. auto loan debt. So those fancy cars you see everywhere? Yeah, they aren't paid for. They're leveraged obligations just eating up someone's take-home pay.
And you know, this exact same math applies to our closets. Here's a wild statistic for you. Middle-class consumers account for more than half of global luxury sales. They use visible logos, like a giant Gucci belt or a monogrammed Louis Vuitton bag, to signal upward mobility. But the genuinely wealthy, they practice quiet luxury. For them, the visible logo has become a reliable indicator that you're aspiring to be rich. The total lack of a logo? That shows you've already arrived. Now, this math gets even more intense when we talk about housing. Manufactured wealth absolutely loves the oversized, new-build house in the suburbs. But look at the numbers. If you stretch your budget for an extra $2,000 a month in carrying costs, you aren't just paying for an upgraded kitchen. If you invested that $2,000 at 8% for 25 years, it compounds to $1.8 million. You are literally forfeiting almost $2 million of future structural wealth just for visible space today. The visibly wealthy optimize for today's space, but the structurally wealthy optimize for a compounded tomorrow. We see this directional reversal everywhere we look. The visibly wealthy paying massive premiums just to broadcast status to total strangers. You know, financing a Rolex, slapping down a heavy metal credit card with a $700 annual fee, or putting an all-inclusive resort on credit. Meanwhile, the quiet reality is entirely different. Actual millionaires wear obscure luxury watches most people can't even name, they definitely don't geotag their private vacation rentals, and a staggering 73% of them never even carry a month-to-month credit card balance. That flashy metal card, it's simply the cost of the broadcast.
And of course, this performative trap extends right into social media. You know that Instagram feed full of rented Lamborghinis and curated luxury dinners? Well, to a wealthy person, that is a massive red flag. The truly wealthy actually maintain very low profiles because visibility literally costs money.
Plus, it attracts risk, things like identity theft and highly targeted cyber attacks known as whaling. The performatively wealthy have completely inverted this calculus. They're out there chasing algorithmic dopamine while compromising their actual real-world security. When you add it all up, these performative choices create a massive financial hemorrhage across every single stage of life. Take weddings. A $60,000 destination wedding forfeits over $600,000 in future invested wealth. And ironically, studies show weddings over $20K statistically correlate with higher divorce rates. Crazy, right? Or how about phones? Upgrading an iPhone every 2 years drains over $100,000 in potential lifetime wealth. And taking out massive six-figure loans for premium private schools just to signal social status, you are literally mortgaging your own retirement.
So, moving on to Section 3, what real wealth actually looks like.
This brings up a pretty fascinating question. If wealthy people are completely ignoring your designer bag and your leased luxury car, how do they recognize each other? Well, if you want the true decoder ring for this society, you need to know the highly specific, incredibly quiet behavioral tells that rich people actually use to spot real financial security.
These tells are absolutely fascinating. First off, wealthy people notice time abundance. If someone arrives 10 minutes early and is completely calm, they're signaling they have structural margin in their life. They also notice well-maintained teeth, which is a surprisingly reliable indicator of consistent disposable income over decades. And perhaps most importantly, they notice a complete, absolute absence of money talk. The genuinely wealthy never talk about prices or deals. You see, these behavioral patterns cluster together to form a sort of fingerprint. It's a fingerprint of genuine security that simply cannot be faked with a high-limit credit card.
This right here is the directional reversal you really have to understand. The manufactured wealth cluster, the loud bags, the leased cars, that signals aspiration. It tells the world you are climbing. But the structural wealth cluster, that quiet confidence, the time abundance, that signals security. It tells the world you have arrived. Anyone who has spent significant time around real money has internalized this. Visible luxury items now reliably signal middle-class aspiration, not actual arrival.
All right, let's head into our final part, Section 4, Building the Invisible Foundation.
So, escaping this trap doesn't mean you have to throw away all your nice things. It just means shifting your focus to building the boring, invisible structure underneath your visible life. You need to know your real numbers. Find out exactly where your money is leaking into performative purchases. Then sequence your financial priorities to optimize for your future and build a solid 30-day foundation plan to stop the bleeding.
There's a concept that perfectly summarizes this entire shift in mindset. The visible life that wealthy people lead is the natural output of the structure they built. You cannot reverse the equation. Think about that. The quiet confidence you are looking for only emerges from a rock-solid foundation. You simply can't just buy the output without doing the boring, structural work that actually produces it.
Once you see this pattern, I promise you, you truly cannot unsee it. From now on, you'll see those loud broadcasts and recognize them for exactly what they are. And you'll see the quiet wealth and recognize the deep security behind it. Which leaves us with one incredibly important, provocative choice to make about our own financial futures. Now that you know the difference, which side of this pattern do you want to be on?